Learn to be super successful. Subscribe to my channel, Meathead. And I was part of the group that made Caligula, the movie, back in the late 70s. And it's quite remarkable that the people on the fucking stage can keep concentration when they got too out here. Okay, you're almost ready, and then so then they can go in with their big willy. The reason I thought of that this morning, not every day, but almost every day, I get emails, I get letters from Indian doctors from India that calls himself. I've decided to put into practice and not be part of the pity baggage and praying for me. Of course, I thought of our own aggression-filled doctor here. And I get emails. A guy who came through the seminar in 2017 finally did his first deal signed. And when I told him at the seminar that he was going to have problems with his partner, and he's fought a lawsuit for 15, 18 months, cost him a lot of money, kept him in court, but he still finally did the deal. He's from New Zealand. He did a healthcare deal in Australia. We get, what is it? What do these guys call themselves? Since we've met somebody, stop following motivational speakers, blah, 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 blah. My sincere thanks. But I get them over and over and over. And that's why I say, when people ask me, I live in Des Moines, Iowa. Are there people rolling up home health? I don't have a fucking clue. I live in Minnesota. Are people doing assisted living? I don't have a fucking clue. I only know you guys. But there are thousands. And I just got an email. Somebody said that it's like when they're there, they think they have the right of, they own the territory. Because it's like back in the old days, they put a stake in the ground and they were there first. Well, that's not how it works. It's not who's there first, it's who gets the deal done first. And so the more and more I become an overnight success after 25 years, the more competition there is. But even with that, there's no competition. And that's the point I'm making. Even with the thousands of kids that are out there, not because they fail, but not because they don't have the secret sauce, but they give up. They give up. And but you will, when you leave here tomorrow, you will, for the most part, you won't even bump into anybody that understands QLA. That's part of the challenge, because you're going to have to convince them that commercial debt is the way. Commercial debt is the way. Now, it's easy to convince them when interest rates are as low as they are. Interest rates are going to be 10 again one of these days. And God forbid, Allah forbid, maybe higher. But this system worked when interest rates were 15%. And at 15%, there's even less competition because the interest rates scare everybody off, except you guys. And I've said it 15, 20 times. When the market turns, and it's going to turn, and once you get over the shock, like the shock this morning, Boris Johnson crushed the opposition, just like Donald Trump is going to crush them in the next election. He fucking crushed them. They're talking about there shouldn't be a Labor Party anymore. I never knew why there was one, but anyway, that's a whole other story. He crushed them, and they won seats they had not won for the Tories since 1923. They won seats that they hadn't won since Maggie Thatcher steamrolled them in 86. The world is waking up. The world is waking up. So after gloating a while and watching the news last night, then I finally went to sleep. But now the NHS in this country may get privatized. If that happens, It's the best thing that ever happened to us vis-a-vis the guys that are going into the healthcare sector, because they're going to be selling off shit. I mean, they could sell. It's going to take them 10 years to privatize NHS. 10 years. 10 years. At least 10 years, because it's such an integral part of the economy. Such an integral part of the economy. Last night you saw Andrew, who went kind of crazy in the latter parts of his life because he was giving his money away. What are the takeaways about Mr. Carnegie?
There was no consistency between his parents. His mother was very aggressive and she wanted wealth. She wanted to also show herself back to her town. She wanted to prove to people that she had been successful, and yet his father and uncle and grandfather were the opposite. So I think that created a lot of confusion in his mind.
Now, depending on what story you want to believe, he either left Scotland as a 7-year-old and a stowaway in an old ship, or he went there with his parents when he was 12 or 13 years old, when they shut the mills or the looms down that his father had because they became obsolete or outdated or whatever. I like the story when he was living with rats in the belly of the ship. That sounds a better story, but it may not be true. But I never get confused by the facts. So, I have a proclivity for exaggeration. There's a bit of truth in everything I say, but sometimes there's just a little bit of truth. Yes, in the back?
Yeah, it was really interesting seeing his relationship with Frick. It sounded like there was a lot of tension to
He fucked him.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
He's a ruthless bastard.
Yeah. I mean, there is a consistency. Don't you have umbrellas in the cottages, or are you just trying to look like a wet Indian?
I didn't.
Is that your seat?
No, it's not.
There's a consistency, and there's a theme. Success leaves clues. There's a theme through all these icons. Hard, ruthless, I don't know about savage, and that they forget, they have a tendency to forget who helped them, which has been my experience, unfortunately. As I told you, the guys, some of those guys I haven't heard from in 20 years. I'm in the Hall of Fame 15 years. I don't want Christmas cards. I'm not telling you, please don't start now. Don't start now just because you heard me on fucking YouTube. Yeah, how come I don't hear from you? But I don't, because very much in line with sensitivity equals poverty, I'm on board, pull up the gangplank. You could be drowning out there, but I'm on board, pull up the gangplank. And that's why a vast majority of the kids that have been very successful don't want to do webinars, don't want to have anything to do. You heard Jessica say, don't link me, don't link fuck me. I'm not interested. You're not adding value to my life. Most of them don't even say anything. They just don't want to have anything to do with you. But they really think that you're competition. I don't look at you as competition because I know the market is so big. You're not going to be competition for the guys that have made billions in healthcare or telco or you're not. You're just not, because there's so much business out there. What else about Mr. Carnegie? Yes.
He had a very self-righteous self-image, especially towards the end of his career.
Self-righteous? I don't know. Really? Yeah, they get, a lot of the guys become full of themselves. And now remember, almost all these guys are introverts. And you can expect an extrovert getting full of himself and, talking shit, but since most of the high-performance people are introverts, just like most of you in this room, it just happens. And although there's not much documentation about when the first Rockefeller first got rich, about the shit he went and did, although he was a Bible thumper and he was a self-righteous guy, there's not much about what Edison did or what some of these other guys did, but they did it. They did. It's natural. It's I don't want to say it's human, but it's natural to when you go from abject poverty to the other end of the continuum that you're not used to, that you do strange things with the money that you make. And they're the paraphrase, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, hopefully without the drug part. What else about? Yes, sir.
He changed also the face of the industry, but also of the whole country. Just a poor guy.
Yeah. And he could stand under my armpit. Yeah. Now, I could give a whole seminar about a lot of these guys that are short. They have a Napoleon complex, okay? And but Steve Ballmer's not short, but but most of the guys aren't big in stature. They're not big in stature. And there's a whole psychological theory, a psychiatric theory about the overcompensating in something that they couldn't do. Now, because I was a poor athlete or had no athletic prowess to speak of, and my dad was an All-American athlete in 3 sports, I overcompensated. But truthfully, my dad and I never talked about it. He never talked about my poor athletic ability or the lack thereof. But I know he cringed. He had to cringe. You know, my baseball career, I'm in center field. I'm on the JV team, not the real team. And we're winning, I think it was 3-2 in the 9th inning. I'm in center field because I could do less damage in center field, they thought. And I'm just praying, please don't hit it to me. And some guy, boom, and I can still see the ball. And I'm sitting here, and I dropped it. And we lost 5-3. That's my baseball career. I can close my eyes, I can see that motherfucking ball, I can see the seams in the ball. Just don't drop it, Dan. And they used to teach us that the best way is a basket catch. It's the easier, you won't drop. Instead of this shit, running around. I would never try that. Basket catch, somehow it got through my fingers. I'm not sure how. I still think that glove had a fucking hole in it. To this day, I had a malfunctioning fucking baseball glove. And I told you, I may have told you, my football career was a little better. We were losing 42-2 to Manual Arts High School. Manual Arts High School was an all-black school. And they wouldn't let us play Manual Arts during the nighttime. We had to play them in the daytime. It had to be a daytime game. It was a Thursday afternoon game. And they had a guy named Harry Wells, who was an all-American fullback, 265 pounds. This is in high school, 265-pound fullback. And on defense, he played defensive tackle, and the offense, he played fullback. And he came around the right end, and it was like a magnet to me, right at me. And I was standing on about the 25-yard line, and by the grace of Allah, I got in his way. It wasn't a real tackle. I got in his way, and I stayed low, and he carried me about 18, 20 yards with me hanging onto his big 30-inch thighs, but he didn't score. They carried me off the fucking field. That was my football career. It was better than my baseball career. God damn. Okay, what else about Mr. Carnegie? Yes, sir.
So there was quite an impression on technology when he was a kid. The looms, which were manually labored, gave way to technological advances, and his father just watched that happen as their fortune drained. Andrew's career, he acted. He burned the trains, right? Burn the cars, do this, do that, new technology.
Pull the trigger.
Pull the trigger. Right? So he was greatly influenced by the lack of action that his father took. Maybe that was the drive. But he certainly pulled the trigger as an adult. He didn't wait around long. He got stuff done.
And as we talked about yesterday, I want you to come out like in the first round, the 1-round boxing events, come out smoking. Correct. I mean, like Doc, just think of all the animosity he's got built up for these fucking patients. That don't allow him to get as rich as he thought when he first entered medical school. Because the market's changed. And what else about, yes, sir?
So, I see this is really the capstone, right? So you've curated videos we've had a wide range of people, and now we've got the guy that the model is
Correct.
So once again, here's a tool where I can see someone coming from the worst poverty, destroyed family, overbearing, crazy mom, into an environment that he didn't know, taking advantage of technology, growing it into a huge empire. I mean, there's no difference between him and me. It could be anybody in this room.
And when you say technology, just imagine what they considered technology back then, as opposed today. Now, the technology that got the guy on the moon 50 years ago, you have in your phones 100 times or 1,000 times more. I mean, just imagine the difference. But that was technology then. It was part of the Industrial Revolution, and guys like himself and the Vanderbilt and Rockefeller were creating new industries. And arguably, he created the steel industry, of which, for whatever reason, he knew that buildings, railroads, etc., were going to be using that technology, and he got rich. And at the end, when he sold for $450 million or whatever it was, he could have got more. He could have got more money. Which at that time, $450 million was all the money in the world, more or less. And when your opportunity comes and you're exposed to big money, I mean, you will use that just as I used when we went public, took an option public, and I created several $100 million when the bell opened up and the stock first traded, not recently, but 15, 20 years ago. I used that as the incentive. I just, through a actualization, I think about that moment. I remember when the bell rang and I realized that when the first trade on the stock exchange, and I was instantly super wealthy. And that's what I used for many, many years. I don't use it anymore. But as soon as you have a success, and then another success, and you continue to build, and the success is just as the model is, 1.5 million, 3 million, 5 million, 7 million, your successes will get bigger and bigger. And the feeling that you get will be reinforced every time, and then it's one after another. And then when you're like Marcus Bauer doing 20, 25 deals in a year, that buzz, like they talk about on the internet, is with you all the time. From the time when you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night. They used to say, psychiatrists that I've known over the years, said that one of the reasons I drank so much when I was younger is I was so wound up, and I didn't take drugs. I was so wound up tight. I had such an energy level. It was the only thing that slowed me down. And I even drinking a lot, I still didn't sleep, because I mean, every minute I slept, I realized I wasn't making money. Every minute I slept, it was wasted time. It was downtime. And then you never want to not be doing deals. You never want to, turning over rocks. And that's why I wear frog cufflinks, and I've got frogs. I probably have 250 of them in the castle in various places, because I never want to forget what got me here. And that's turning over rocks, kissing frogs, seeing people. It's one of the reasons I see people when I travel around the world. I have a couple hours set aside, 1 or 2 days while I'm in the hotel, and I either bring the kids up to the suite or I see them in the lobby for a coffee, because I want to not ever not do that. What happens is you stop doing what got you to the top, and then pretty soon you're not on the top anymore. I often use the example, Usain Bolt. Almost everybody knows Usain Bolt. He was the greatest sprinter for 10 years. His last world championship a couple years ago, he decided to change his training. He thought maybe he could win the world championship in the 100 on his reputation. But I mean, Gatlin and some other guys that he had been racing against for 5, 6, 7 years had other ideas. He used to train every day until he threw up. His body, his energy was so spent he'd throw up. One of my mentees, who's actually coming to the hardcore, used to be the training partner of Houston. And he decided the last 3 weeks that he was gonna, I must still have it. Well, he finished third. So his last official race, he's third. Now, it's not like he went out a loser, because he wasn't a loser, but he didn't go out first. And he had not been first in about 10 years, because he altered his training regimen, and the things that got him to all those gold medal and first places, he didn't replicate it, and he lost. I'm here to tell you, you continue to replicate it till you decide you're through, your last exit, okay? And I hope you never have your last exit. Your last exit is dying. That'll be your last exit, dying. What else about Mr. Carnegie? Yes, sir.
So, about the workers, they went through inhuman treatment.
Aren't you going to ask me about free cash flow?
So the workers went through...
Doc thinks that's funny. Yeah, look at you. Don't have a stroke on us, Doc. Go ahead.
So the workers went through inhuman treatment, which tells us that people in the weaker positions are always or often going to suffer, and the choice is not to be successful or not. The choice is between having that kind of a treatment and being successful.
Well, I mean, if you often heard me say I've been rich and I've been poor. There are been poorer people than me, but I mean, I was pretty poor, and there's no comparison. Sally and I, only in the last 3 or 4 years, have agreed. We used to agree to disagree. Now we agree that she was poorer than me. For my marriage, I have agreed that she's poorer than me. Okay, and there's a lot of things. I never lived in a caravan. 5 people in a little shitty ass caravan. So maybe she was poor. But it's the actions or the feelings or the ambiance of being poor that if you've been poor, you never forget. Now, it's hard for you guys to understand or believe, especially the YouTube, being on this estate that, I was very poor. And now, arguably Sally and I can't spend the money we have. I mean, if we tried. She's trying, I'm not. But if we were both trying, we could probably get through the money before I'm dead. But since she's the only one trying to spend it, it's not likely we will. But you're right. And when you get the first taste for many of you of high performance people will be the people on your board. Often in your reports, the first report you're going to write me, I didn't believe a year ago that I could be sitting down and being in charge of this group of people. In charge. Now, you'll be unincharged if you don't show some leadership, because they'll cut your head off and throw you out. But you follow the steps and follow the leadership steps, which are pretty simple. It's Leadership 101. And remember, the only book you ever have to read on leadership or management is Tough-Minded Management and Tough-Minded Leadership. It's 2 different books by Joe Batten. Joe Batten, who was the mentor of Ross Perot, amongst others. I mean, it's fundamental. It's Leadership 101 and Management 101, but Tough Love, Management 101. Tough Love, Leadership 101 in the book. And Joe's gone now, but when you follow that and you lead, and your leadership skills will grow almost geometrically, because most of you don't have many leadership skills at all. You've never been exposed to be in a position where you were in charge of a bunch of people and a bunch of money. Now, you go off the rails, as I've been teasing the last couple of days, because you start spending money on shit and buy stuff that you don't need. But not need, but you want. There's a difference between wanting something and needing something. I'm told you need water. You can't live without water for I don't know how many days. Okay. You don't necessarily want water, but you need it. And a certain amount of food, other than if you're fasting, you need it. You don't necessarily want it. And I always tease the vegans, why would you want that shit? But that's I could give a whole seminar on that, but I'm not going to. What else about, yes, sir?
So we hear about reciprocity a lot, but when Carnegie's mentor needed him at most, he turned him down. It was kind of like Nick Bollettieri, I come first.
All these guys come first in their mind. I've never met one that didn't come first in their mind. I've been around some of these guys that are married, and their wives will say, no, he didn't really mean that. Of course he did, but the wife is trying to soften it up. He didn't really, he didn't really mean that. He didn't mean to say that. Now, we all know he did mean to say it, and their significant other is trying to soften it up. I get a lot of that, and I told you that's why I have scar tissue on my legs from Sally kicking me under the table. And she's drawn blood through my dark suit. You can't see it like it, but a light gray suit. She's drawn blood. She's kicked me hard enough. What else about? Yes, sir.
If the manager or the work crew fell behind, they got fired. Bringing them to work 18-hour days, and competitive spirit too. One versus the other. One furnace versus the other.
Fired. They got fired. And there's no problem sacking people that deserve to get sacked. Remember, I said that 2 or 3 days ago. It's not the people that you fire that kill your business. It's the people that you don't fire that kill your business. And longevity is not a good reason to have people keep people. I'm not a big believer in legacy information with employees, especially with the internet, and everything should be on the internet. And you should have your systems, processes, and procedures. So, but I mean, 60, 70 years ago, a guy that's there 20, 30 years has legacy information. Has legacy, not as much as he pretends to have, because he wants to keep his job. But today, that legacy information, or the benefit of the legacy information, is a lot less because we have the internet. We're not going to go over our goals and affirmations on YouTube. We'll do that later. Not that I'm not embarrassed by them, but the history tells me that they're better off said not with YouTube pundits. They're criticizing or critiquing. Anything else about Mr. Carnegie? Yes, sir.
Even when he was little, when he went around, I think it was on the mail route or something, he remembered the wealthy businesses' names, and then he used them when he saw them again, so he ingratiated himself at a young age with the wealthy businessmen.
Now,
looking for mentors or whatever.
It's coincidental, because I bought this place not realizing that Mr. Carnegie's 40, 50 miles down the road. But I almost bought Skibo Castle. After I'm here about 5 or 6 years, Skibo was the place he built, which is about 100 miles north of here, more or less. And having already known what it cost to maintain this place, Skibo had 105 bedrooms, as I recall, and most of the castle hadn't been lived in, so they were only utilizing 10 or 15% of the castle. And so I had a pretty good idea what it would cost to renovate it, and I passed. Although it was cheap, it was like 10 or 15 million bucks. I think it had 17,000 acres, had a golf course that hadn't been manicured in 50, 60, 70 years. So, but I passed on it. But it would even be more irony if we're having the seminar in Skibo Castle where Andrew Carnegie started this thing. Now, what would he think about the QLA methodology? I don't know. He would focus in on the only thing that's really important, and that is, other than the motivated seller, and that is the fact that commercial debt. And he did it because he didn't like giving away equity. And he realized if he took equity investors, he's giving up the ownership. And the little cheap bastard didn't want to do that. And I want you to be a little cheap bastard as well. And because there's no reason at the end of a transaction, just like the one that the guy fought for a year and a half to get done, for you to control the wealth. And as you were showed by Raymond yesterday, it grows geometrically. You accumulate the equity that's attributable to your balance sheet because you own it. And the people that are really the driving force vis-a-vis industry experts, etc., grow geometrically, but at a much smaller rate. Because you don't need to be a mathematician to figure out that 60% grows to a bigger number than 2%, given the same circumstances. Anything else about Mr. Carnegie?
He moved where the opportunity was, and he brought.
So that means you'll be moving to Haiti, right? You know, I say something racist, but I'm not going to when we're on camera. The opportunity. You go where the opportunity. Well, right now, healthcare opportunity is just about any place. Because roughly speaking, worldwide, 20 cents of every dollar spent on an economy is healthcare related, either directly or indirectly. In this country, it's about 18 or 19%, and it's estimated by 2030 it'll be 22 or 23%. And the main reason for that is because we're getting older and staying alive longer. And you don't want them to live with you, i.e. your parents, so you put them in a home someplace, which they're not. Most people are reluctant to go into assisted living. They would rather be at home and die at home, but that means they're dying with you. And taking care of old people is hard work, unless you have full-time help, etc. And even with full-time help, it's hard work. And if they slip into early onset dementia, etc., it's harder work. And so it's easier to put them in a place. I'm not saying this. I'm just voicing what my experience is. And go see them once a week. And then once a week becomes once a month. And then once a month becomes once a quarter. Then you go see them maybe at Christmas or Hanukkah, at Easter, and then you don't see them at all. And then you wish that you had seen him. And then that's a major regret. So when I looked at your faces now and don't see him at all, I think some of you are already at the stage of not seeing him at all. Okay, anything else? Okay, YouTube.